Good morning. You may have a seat. My name is Emily Yergler. I'm one of the youth associates here. And it is my privilege and honor to introduce our three senior speakers today, JT Garcia, Natalie Scheifele, and Ben Henderson. Wherever he just went, he was up here. But I've had the privilege of knowing them the past 3 years, and I have been extremely blessed, and I know you will be blessed to hear them today as well. Just a little bit about them. Natalie Scheifele, she was one of the first people I actually met. She was on the committee that hired me. And so we met via Skype the first time. But I have had the privilege to be a part of her faith journey these past 3 years, and I am extremely honored to call her my friend. And she excels at reaching down and building relationships with the girls younger than her and the boys too. And she even came on our ski trip this spring break, which is mostly 8th graders and 9th graders, if you know that trip. So she is an overachiever, and she has made a lasting impact on my life, and I know the youth ministry as a whole. JT Garcia, my first memory of him was he helped Matt Fricker out during one of his sermons. I remember he came in in full garb, and he never broke once, and I was so impressed, and now he's going off to pursue a career in acting, so it all makes sense. And Ben Henderson, last but not least, he has really stepped up this past year. I've seen him really come into his own. He has played a major role in the formation of the youth band, which we were all so blessed by this morning. So without further ado, our seniors.
What's up, guys? How y'all doing today? I'm Ben Henderson. It's usually customary for the speakers to introduce themselves and what college they're going to next year. I actually have not made a decision yet. I'm deciding between Austin College, the College of William and Mary, and Texas A&M. Woo, yeah, there we go. I actually have to make that decision later today. Just kind of. All right, enough about me though. This is about Jesus, So without further ado. This is the overlooked allure of a Christian lifestyle. Fiesta, that ain't bad. Breakfast tacos before church, that ain't bad. Friday off for the Battle of the Flowers parade, that ain't bad. And you know what really ain't bad? Police giving you a warning instead of a ticket. So, I've been blessed with a great group of guys in high school who, as a group, seem to have a knack for creating inside jokes and friend group signature sayings that we all share and enjoy together. And anyone with ears could tell this much just from listening to some of the names we have for each other. The Honorable H-Dog, Hutch Daddy, D1 Chuck, Tienda, and Red Man, to name a few. Probably don't make much sense to y'all. That's okay, though. I'm not even sure where that ain't bad started, but we say it all the time. And when we say it, it's to describe the little aspects of life that ain't bad. Like the little things that brighten your day a little. And what I find absolutely fascinating about this little adage is how a dissonance exists between the goofy and fun occurrence that it appears to be and the deep theological thought provoker that it can be if one were to examine it through a variety of lenses and use it in multiple contexts. And here's what I mean by that. This is me, a high school senior. Henry's grad lunch this Thursday, free food, that ain't bad. Now this is me, a church youth director. Middle schoolers getting excited about the Bible, that ain't bad. And this is society today. Bullying someone because their political beliefs don't align with mine, that ain't bad. Drugs and alcohol, that ain't bad. Pornography, that ain't bad. Abandoning any sense of morality and embracing a sinful lifestyle, that ain't bad. Living a virtuous and loving life in the name of Christ, that's bad. Our society today, including many Christians I might add, has fallen victim to believing the fallacy that being a Christian holds you back. I named this sermon The Overlooked Allure of a Christian Lifestyle because I'd like to provide those of you suffering from this delusion with a new way of thinking that will hopefully make you feel differently about your faith. So when life gets to you, when you get depressed, if you get fired, if your marriage gets rocky, if a loved one dies, we have two options. We can either react like a Christian or not react like a Christian. And the peculiar thing about this second option is that Christians and non-Christians alike seem to choose it more often than not. And while it might seem attractive at first, it almost exclusively ends up being a miserable and painful road to ruin, plagued with frustration. So what does this non-Christian reaction to adversity look like? Some of us try to numb our problems. We try to leave the world and get lost in video games. We engage in promiscuity. We do drugs. We get drunk. Taking a step back and thinking about this sheds light on how ridiculous it really is. I mean, do people actually think alcohol is more powerful than God? And even if someone doesn't believe in God, do they really think that the positive aspects of drinking will overpower both the negative aspects of drinking and the problems they're trying to drink away? It's absolute lunacy. In addition to numbing ourselves, we can get angry. And anger is one of our fatal flaws. Not much even needs to be said about it. It incapacitates us, it lowers our quality of life, it pushes people away from us, and it gets nothing done. And the same can be said for getting sad and letting your problems beat you down to a sense of hopelessness. Nothing good ever comes out of a depressed mindset. And in addition to numbing, rage, and sadness, we also try to deal with problems by being God. We think we can control everything, and we eventually burn out. While we do have the ability to control ourselves, we can't control every little thing in the world, and attempting to do so leads to all the non-Christian reactions to adversity I've already discussed. And this ends up leading to a vicious cycle of self-destruction. And if trying to be God sounds ridiculous, sometimes we try to control God. We tell him what he needs to do, and we can't ever accept no as an answer, as if we know better than him. I mean, come on. And sometimes we make deals with him because we just expect him to bend his will to ours. God, if I don't commit this specific sin for a week, then you have to let me score a goal next soccer game. Deal? Deal. Sounds all good, right? Or God, if I don't do such and such for a month, you have to cure my friend's cancer. Friends, let me tell you something. If you're making deals with God, just don't. That's not how God works. He has a will and a plan that's completely superior to yours in every way, and he probably finds it a little offensive that you think you can bend his will to yours. Furthermore, it's not like any of us can impress God. No matter what we do, we're still sinners who depend on his love. And for those of you who make a habit of bargaining with God, this should come as a relief to you, because by now you've probably realized that you're a human and you fail almost every time. So, once again, having a meaningful and personal relationship with Christ is often portrayed as a burden. But now that we've disproved the notion that a life without Christ is free of burden, let's discuss the benefits of loving Jesus that are often missed. Loving Jesus offers us a reduction in the amount of repercussions associated with the non-Christian lifestyle. And I say less repercussions rather than no repercussions because of the humbling fact that we aren't perfect, we're humans. So here's an example. Think about it this way. When people get married, they don't plan on having an affair 10 years down the line and destroying their family. And it's not like people plan on becoming lifelong drug addicts or plan on becoming a criminal. But tragedies like that just end up happening when people don't center their lives around a firm, unchanging Christian morality. Living a Christian lifestyle breaks the chains of sin and guilt that enslave us and bog us down. Ironically, people assume that submitting to Christ involves being enslaved by the law and adding the weight of trying to be a good Christian to their already heavy load. However, giving your life to the Lord actually frees you from the bondage so seductively and deceptively provided by sin. And it's not as if the Christian law holds us back either. God forgave us because he knows we're not perfect, and for us, fulfilling the law is impossible. It can't be done. And Christians don't believe that they'll go to hell if they don't follow the law or fulfill the law. Rather, we believe sola gratia, a saying y'all are probably familiar with, saved by grace alone. And when we truly love the Lord, we tend to want to follow the law out of love and the understanding that God gave us laws for our own good. And the guilty conscience that is sometimes associated with trying to be pious can be a turnoff for many lukewarm Christians. And I consider this line of thought shameful and absurd because it's a perversion of what Christianity is really about. Most world religions are based on fear and legalism. You mess up, and you spend liberal amounts of time carrying the guilt around with you and being terrified of what will come from your mistake. What sets Christianity apart, however, is that the deity-human relationship is grounded on something that defies all human logic and sense of justice: love. Christians ideally should have a guilty conscience to keep them in line, but it should be driven and powered by love and the desire to please God, not fear God. And when we do let temptation overwhelm our morality, we don't have to dwell on our mistakes because we can rest assured knowing that we are forgiven. Being a Christian also brings peace of mind. First of all, less repercussions associated with the non-Christian lifestyle equates to a happier conscience. Second of all, as I just talked about, Jesus gives us a healthy outlet for our guilt. Also, when the road gets bumpy, it's quite the relief to know that God, the ultimate being who is all-powerful and loves you more than you can comprehend, is in control. Furthermore, you know that Jesus is walking with you and suffering with you. And this gives us the ability to take peace in the fact that in our suffering, we're not ignored, we're not alone, and that there is a divine purpose behind what is happening. And peace of mind can also be achieved by letting go of grudges. To quote the Lord's Prayer, "Forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors." With Jesus, we have been forgiven, and as we have been forgiven, we can forgive others and forgive ourselves. With God's permission and command to live in the world, not of the world, we can also ease the weight on our psyches by relinquishing our desires to measure up to the impossible standards this world piles on us and focus on making the world a better place, spreading Jesus' love, and doing what we've been put here to do: glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Brothers and sisters in Christ, your religion should never be a stressor. Your faith should never be a burden. Your Lord should never terrorize or distress you. So put a smile on your face, because we're Christians, baby. Thank y'all.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Natalie Scheifele, and I'm a senior at St. Mary's Hall, and I will be attending Texas A&M. Yeah, this fall. And I'll be studying biomedical science and competing on the track and field team up there. So ever since I was a little girl, I've been drawn to competitions. If that means who could make the most angel ornaments in art class, or who could win the giant pack of gummy bears instead of the tiny little ones on the tennis club gummy bear tournament. I mean, who wouldn't want the big pack instead of the little one? Competing is in my genes, but my parents have always told me that my athleticism is a gift. And throughout my childhood, I've been figuring out what to do with it. As a little girl in Germany, I used to use it as a way to make friends. Everyone in the village played sports, and half the people there had parents who competed in the Olympics. So, I mean, obviously they were going to play sports. When I moved here to the States when I was in 3rd grade, I used sports as a way of communication because I didn't speak English very well. But man, I could run around and kick a soccer ball or bump a volleyball as anyone else. Later, sports became my stress reliever after school. And before going back to work on homework, you could find me on the field. And these past few years in high school, sports had become my identity. My gift was no longer a thing I used, but who I'd become. And I think everyone has struggled with that at one point or another. I mean, it was so easy. I was playing sports every season during the fall, during winter, and during spring, and even in the summer. I played club in addition to school sports. Everyone called me an athlete, so I mean, why couldn't I just be that one singularity? However, I've realized that God had given me so much more than just athleticism. He had given me an amazing family, wonderful friends, a community of believers here at First Pres and at Lady Lodge, which is a summer camp I go to, as well as amazing opportunities. But these opportunities and open doors do not come alone. There must be doors that have been closed to guide us to open ones, because if everything was open, I mean, what would you choose? As a freshman, I believed that I'd go to school for horseback riding. That door was closed when I realized I wanted to be part of a team rather than competing by myself in a ring. Then I thought, well, maybe volleyball is the way, until that final ankle roll, and I realized my body could not handle the pressure anymore. Then I thought, well, maybe soccer. I tore my meniscus and kneecap months into club season, and that door was closed as well. Well, then I thought, well, my mom loves golf, I love golf, maybe I'll do golf. I practiced every day after school, walked courses with my mom, and trained. But once again, that door was closed too. I had no idea what I was doing, and especially now, I had no idea what I was, because I was sports, and not anymore. The one thing I did know for a fact is that I was going to A&M, as an athlete or not. Seeing my mom, uncle, cousins, brother, camp counselors, and friends all going to A&M and having such a great experience, I knew that that college was going to support me as an individual, but more importantly, help me thrive in my faith with a supportive community. After so much searching, mainly on my own power, especially on my own power, I turned to God and asked him what he wanted me to do. Now, I never heard this booming voice come from the sky and say, now, you should do this, or, oh, this is your path. But I knew that his hand and will were in everything that I did. And I finally saw it. Later, a couple years, actually last week, I came across a Bible verse after I wrote this, and it's from Proverbs 3:5-6, which reads, I trust in the Lord with all my heart and lean not on my own understanding. In all my ways, I acknowledge him, and he directs my path. Now, I was leaning definitely on my own understanding, and definitely of what I understood of what my gift was. I saw that I was not defined by my sports, but I was defined by my relationship with him, with God. Through all the struggles and identity crisis, and without looking, I came across a sport that I've never known about. At a track meet, I ended up skipping one of the running events, which I never told my coach that I skipped it. They're still kind of mad, but not really. And went to a javelin throwing exhibition with a friend. Now, javelin isn't a high school event in Texas. It's actually illegal to throw in high school. But my friend and I, we ended up going to little meets out in the middle of nowhere and throwing with old men and women who are about 50 years old. And we're actually not super old, but older than me. and both of us, yeah. And both of us are going to college for it. So she's going to Princeton, and I'm heading up to A&M. It happened all so fast and so smoothly, and I cannot even start to take credit for what I've done to deserve it, because I've done nothing. I know that this was God and God alone, and I pray that I have the humility to glorify him always. And I pray that here, everyone in this room understands that your identity doesn't belong in the gifts that he had given you. Your gifts are something that God gave you to glorify him and to have a wonderful life here on earth. And he had given you also opportunities with your gifts to share his word. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm JT Garcia, and next year I will be going to the University of Southern California to pursue, to pursue a degree in both business administration and dramatic arts. So any UT fans, don't talk to me about, Rose Bowl. Okay, so every summer since I was in second grade, I have been either going to or working at a little summer camp outside of Burnet, Texas called Camp Longhorn. Some of y'all may be familiar with that. Out of way to go, if so. And before you're going into high school, so the summer of your 8th grade year, they put on this awesome boot camp for the 8th graders, because 8th graders are full of themselves and they need to be treated like Army recruits, and so they call it the Marine and Marinas program. It's a program that's all about building leadership. So naturally, the only things that I cared about were the games of capture the flag, jumping over the 9-foot wall they had us climb, and then at the very end of it, diving into a pool of mud, because nothing builds leadership like ruining a pair of shoes and rinsing mud out of your hair for the rest of the day. I have some pictures, they're great. But the activity that we did during that time that stuck with me the most, it went like this. The counselors, they tied blindfolds around us so we couldn't see a thing, and they led us about 100 yards over to a group of trees, and they placed our hands on a string. And they said, okay, you are now on a maze. Find your way to the center. And I was like, oh, I got this, you know? I was feeling like hot stuff. I thought, as long as I keep my hand to my right and the string to my right, I'll just follow the maze, wind my way to the center, be the first one done, and then I can go on jumping into the mud, right? It didn't work out that way. Now, at the very beginning of the whole ordeal, they had told us that we can ask for help anytime. But I was like, who needs it? And so I'm walking blindfolded with my hand on the string, and I come to a tree, and it has 2 more strings, and I'm like, well, okay, I'll just find one and keep following it. This goes on for about 15 minutes, but the whole time they're reminding us, you can ask for help anytime. Feel free to ask for help, and I just don't even hear it. Until I trip over a tree branch and wind up letting go of the string on accident. And then, not even seriously, more as a joke than anything else, I yell, help! And a counselor comes over, taps me on the shoulder, and whispers into my ear and says, you can take off your blindfold, you've completed the mission. And I look behind me, and I almost start bursting out laughing. Because what I thought was this huge maze was really just a circle of string tied around a couple of trees. Now, the lesson's pretty clear, right? Feel free to ask for help. You can always do it, and it will be provided for you. But taking that lesson and extending it further beyond that time in my life, it becomes so much better. Without Jesus, we are like I was at the beginning of the maze. So certain in my ability to succeed, so confident in my self-assigned purpose, but that just leads to walking in circles. But when we welcome Jesus into our hearts, because he wants to be there, he's been telling us all along, ask for help. He wants us to ask for help. When we do, when we let him into our hearts, and we trust in his plan and not our own, the blindfold flies off, and we see that the way we thought our life was going, the purpose that we were so assured of, is nothing more than a trick. But this is all Christianity 101, right? I've been going to this church since I was little, and we all know that God gave us the word to be a light unto our feet and a lamp unto our path. I mean, that's Sunday school first day. But what surprises me is that when we ask for help, when we cry out and say, I can't do this on my own, when we welcome Jesus into our hearts, what surprises me is how he responds and how he uses other believers to be the help that we so desperately need. Last summer, I transferred schools from St. Mary's Hall to San Antonio Christian. And I think the moment for me that was the hardest was after my last speech tournament. Now, for those of you who don't know, speech and debate had been huge in my life ever since middle school. It was basically what defined who I am. And in that moment where I was driving from Birmingham to Atlanta, leaving my last speech tournament, sitting in the passenger seat of my car with my mom driving, I was really unsure of my path. And I could feel that blindfold slipping down just a little bit more into my eyes. And we've all had that situation. That low point in our lives where we are uncertain, we're transferring jobs, we're moving, we're starting a new semester at a new school. And so that was my mindset then, when I get a Snapchat from an old AAU basketball teammate of mine. And now, for those of you who don't know, a Snapchat is like a text message, but more millennial. And so I'm in that low point of my life, and I get a Snapchat from my teammate who I hadn't talked to in a whole year. And even when we were teammates, I didn't see him any more than every other week for a tournament or for a practice. And I open it up, and it is a black screen that simply says, I just prayed for you. And I just felt this wave of relief and of confidence sweep over me. Now, I don't have a seminary degree, but I don't need to have one to know that the Holy Spirit was working through Ben that day to bring me comfort, to bring me peace. But this isn't just a one-way road, and this is the really exciting part of it. I received the peace I needed because Ben reached out, and we are all called to do the same. I'm sure everyone has had a moment where we were touched by the slightest outreach or connection with another, either family or stranger, friend, or somewhere in between. But we should not just be content to let the love flow into us. Jesus saves us so that we may shine like a city on top of a hill for all to see, and not to hide. And by reaching out to a member of this congregation, a long unspoken to friend, or a student starting their first semester at a new school and saying, I'm praying for you, I'm thinking of you, how are you doing? We may just very well unknowingly be the tool that God is using to bring peace into their lives, to heal a person's worry, and to replace anxiety with calm and with confidence. Now, I may only be 18 years old, but I know the love of God, and I know how it overflows into the lives of those around us. So I say, let us be a church that overflows, a people who have our blindfolds removed, a people who remind others it's okay to ask for help, a congregation that wants to draw people away from the maze into the truth, Christians that are willing instruments of God. He has been so good to us. So let's take that care he's given us and extend it to those around us, still grasping that rope, so that their hands may fall on the most solid guide of all, the Word of God. Thank you.